Captain Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room, her heart pounding as she watched General Morrison's face darken with dismissal. The satellite images spread across the table told a story of impending disaster. Enemy forces converging on Bravo Company's position in ways the traditional playbook couldn't counter. She had seen this tactical formation before, in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, where improvisation meant the difference between coming home and becoming a statistic. Her suggestion to use an unconventional Blackhawk insertion maneuver was met with skeptical glances and barely concealed scoffs from the all-male command staff. "Captain, stick to what you know," the general had said, his tone cutting through her confidence like a blade. "But sometimes, what you know isn't found in any manual. It's written in the scars of experience and the desperate creativity born from watching good soldiers die." In 12 hours, her dismissed idea would be the only thing standing between an entire battalion and catastrophe. Captain Sarah Chen had earned her place in that briefing room through blood, sweat, and 3 tours of duty that left their mark not just on her service record, but in the way she analyzed every tactical situation with the cold precision of someone who had seen plans fail and good soldiers pay the price. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Forward Operating Base Sentinel, casting long shadows across the maps and satellite imagery that painted a grim picture of Bravo Company's deteriorating situation. She had been studying these intelligence reports since 400 hours, her trained eye catching patterns that others missed, seeing in the enemy's positioning a deadly trap that conventional wisdom would walk straight into. Her fingers traced the topographical lines, remembering similar terrain in Helmand Province where her squad had been pinned due, on for 18 hours, watching Apache gunships circle helplessly above while insurgents used the landscape to their advantage. The memories weren't just tactical lessons, they were carved into her soul by the faces of the men she couldn't save that day. The briefing room filled with the steady rhythm of combat boots and the rustle of uniforms as senior officers took their positions around the mahogany table that had seen countless operations planned and executed. General Morrison entered with the bearing of a man who had spent 30 years climbing the military hierarchy, his chest adorned with ribbons that spoke of conflicts spanning 3 decades. Yet his eyes held the distant look of someone who had grown comfortable viewing warfare from the safety of command centers rather than the chaos of the battlefield. Colonel Matthews spread the latest reconnaissance photos across the table, his weathered hands pointing to enemy positions that formed a crescent around Bravo Company's forward base, a formation that looked deceptively manageable to those who had never faced it in person. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she recognized the tactical signature. This wasn't random positioning, it was the precursor to a devastating pincer movement that would crush any conventional rescue attempt like a vice closing on the neck of her fellow soldiers. "Gentlemen," General Morrison's voice carried the authority of rank and experience, though Sarah noticed how his gaze seemed to skip over her presence at the table. "Our boys in Bravo Company have found themselves in a tight spot. Intel suggests enemy forces are preparing to overrun their position within the next 12 hours. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional crackle of radio communications that served as the heartbeat of military operations. Major Thompson leaned forward, his finger tracing potential approach routes on the map, each line representing lives that hung in the balance of command decisions made in air-conditioned rooms far from the sound of gunfire. Sarah watched the discussion unfold with growing unease, recognizing the same tactical tunnel vision that had cost lives in Afghanistan, Iraq, and countless other theaters where the enemy refused to follow American military doctrine. When General Morrison outlined the conventional extraction plan, a direct frontal approach supported by artillery and close air support, Sarah felt the familiar knot of dread forming in her stomach, the same feeling she had experienced moments before her convoy hit that IED outside Kandahar. "Sir," Sarah's voice cut through the masculine rumble of tactical discussion, causing several heads to turn in her direction with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed annoyance. "I've seen this enemy formation before. The direct approach will walk us straight into a kill zone." She stood, her slight frame commanding attention through sheer force of conviction rather than physical presence, and moved to the map where her finger traced the enemy positions with the confidence of someone who had faced similar tactical puzzles under live fire. The silence in the room shifted from attentive to skeptical as she outlined her alternative, a high-risk, low-altitude Blackhawk insertion that would use the terrain's blind spots to deliver a rescue force behind enemy lines, a maneuver that defied standard operating procedures but offered the only realistic chance of bringing Bravo Company home alive. The radio crackled to life at 1347 hours with the dreaded words that every commanding officer fears. Overwatch, this is Bravo 6. We are taking heavy fire from 3 directions. Request immediate extraction. General Morrison's bang. She went ashen as the reports flooded in, confirming Sarah's worst predictions with the brutal efficiency of warfare that cares nothing for rank or reputation. The conventional rescue attempt had walked straight into the kill zone she had identified, with 2 Blackhawks forced to abort their approach after taking heavy ground fire, leaving Bravo Company trapped and running low on ammunition, while enemy forces tightened their noose with methodical precision. Sarah stood at the communications console, listening to the desperate voices of soldiers she had trained with, shared meals with, and considered family in the way that only those who have faced death together can understand. Every instinct screamed at her to act, but military protocol demanded she wait for orders from superiors who were still processing the failure of their carefully planned operation. Captain Chen, General Morrison's voice carried a weight that hadn't been there during the morning briefing, the confidence replaced by the urgent desperation of a commander watching his carefully laid plans crumble in real time. Explain your alternative insertion plan again. The transformation in his demeanor spoke volumes about the reality of military leadership. Pride and protocol meant nothing when lives hung in the balance, and even the most stubborn general could recognize expertise when failure stared him in the face. Sarah moved to the tactical display with the fluid motion of someone shifting from observer to operator, her hands dancing across the controls to highlight the treacherous mountain passes that conventional wisdom deemed impassable for rotorcraft. She explained how her proposed low-altitude approach would use the terrain's radar shadows and natural cover to mask their insertion, threading the needle between enemy positions in a maneuver that required precision flying that bordered on the supernatural. The plan demanded split-second timing, intimate knowledge of the local weather patterns, and a level of trust between pilot and ground forces that could only be forged in the crucible of combat experience. The Blackhawk lifted off 15 minutes later with Sarah strapped into the crew chief position, her headset crackling with the tense communication between pilot and navigator as they skimmed the mountaintops at an altitude that made conventional pilots break out in cold sweats. Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez gripped the controls with hands that had guided aircraft through more dangerous situations than most people could imagine, his eyes scanning the instrument panel while simultaneously processing the visual cues from terrain that rushed past their aircraft like a deadly blur of rock and vegetation. Sarah called out navigation points and enemy positions based on her intimate knowledge of the tactical situation, her voice steady despite the fact that they were flying through airspace that any reasonable military doctrine would classify as unsurvivable. The mountains seemed to reach up toward their aircraft with rocky fingers, while thermal updrafts and crosswinds threatened to dash them against the unforgiving stone faces that had claimed countless aircraft over the decades of warfare in this region. The insertion point appeared through the morning haze exactly where Sarah had predicted, a narrow valley that provided cover from enemy observation posts while offering direct access to Bravo Company's defensive perimeter. Rodriguez brought the Blackhawk into a hover that defied physics and common sense. The rotor, whoosh, creating a whirlwind of dust and debris that provided additional concealment, while the rescue team fast-roped into position with movements that spoke of countless hours of training and absolute trust in their equipment. Sarah coordinated the extraction with the calm efficiency of someone who had found their element in the chaos of combat operations, her radio calls directing the movement of wounded soldiers toward the landing zone while simultaneously updating command on the tactical situation. The enemy forces, caught off guard by the unconventional approach route, found themselves outflanked and disoriented as the rescue operation unfolded with the precision of a Swiss watch and the deadly efficiency of a special operations unit. Within 37 minutes of the initial insertion, every member of Bravo Company was aboard extraction aircraft and heading toward safety, their grateful faces reflecting the profound relief of soldiers who had stared death in the face and lived to tell the tale. General Morrison waited on the landing pad as the Blackhawks touched down, his expression transformed from the dismissive authority figure of the morning briefing into something approaching humility and respect. As Sarah supervised the offloading of wounded soldiers, she caught the general's eye and saw in his gaze an acknowledgement that leadership sometimes means recognizing expertise regardless of its source, and that the best military minds often come from those who have earned their knowledge through fire rather than classrooms. The success of the unconventional maneuver had saved not just Bravo Company, but demonstrated that innovation and tactical flexibility remain the hallmarks of effective military leadership in an age where the enemy refuses to follow the rules found in any manual. The story of Captain Sarah Chen reminds us that heroism in the military isn't always about following orders. Sometimes it's about having the courage to speak up when experience tells you there's a better way, even when that voice isn't welcome in rooms dominated by tradition and hierarchy. Her dismissed suggestion became the lifeline that brought 37 soldiers home to their families, proving that the most valuable military asset isn't found in equipment manuals or tactical doctrine, but in the hard-earned wisdom of those who have faced the enemy and learned to adapt, improvise, and overcome. In an era where warfare evolves faster than military bureaucracy, leaders like Captain Chen represent the future of military excellence. Professionals who combine respect for tradition with the innovative thinking necessary to protect those who serve under their command. If this story of military heroism and tactical innovation moved you, please subscribe to honor the brave men and women who serve our nation with distinction. Their stories of courage, sacrifice, and split-second decision, as that save lives, deserve to be told and remembered. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to join our community dedicated to sharing the untold stories of military heroes who prove every day that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when duty calls and lives hang in the balance.